Greetings, my name is Bob Makovic. I am a retired United Methodist minister. For over 35 years I served in the United Methodist ministry. And when I retired, I became a hospice chaplain, and I now serve as the chaplain for Caring Hospice Services here in Cleveland. And for the last 4 years, my wife Janet and I have enjoyed worshiping here at Lakewood Presbyterian Church. It's good to share this opportunity with you in a series I call Caring for the Caregiver. Rosalind Carter, former First Lady Rosalind Carter, once said there are 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who need caregivers. If you find yourself in any of the above categories, I hope and pray that you will find this time helpful and a blessing. In the next 4 sessions, we will cover topics like, so you're a caregiver. Welcome to the club. What are some of the common roles and responsibilities of caregivers? Caregiver stress, burnout, and caring for yourself. And then finally, some of the spirituality of caregiving. As we begin, there's 2 scriptures that come to mind. One is the Golden Rule, which quite frankly is found in every religious tradition around the world. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated. You know that. We've learned it since we were, as the saying goes, knee-high to a grasshopper. The other one comes from Luke's Gospel, the greatest commandment. You know the story. Luke shares it as though a lawyer comes to Jesus and tries to test him and entrap him and ask him, what's the greatest commandment? The greatest commandment is loving God with all your heart and soul and mind, all your strength, your whole being, loving your neighbor as yourself, which in caregiving may mean caring for a spouse, a family member, a friend, or a loved one. It's especially challenging if we think of ourselves as loving, caring people, which we do as Christians. It's part of our DNA. We take part of our identity and our self-worth from ways in which we give to others. Loving others is what we do, almost naturally. Loving self. Now sometimes, especially in caregiving, taking care of the soul of the self becomes a challenge for any of us. My goals in this time together is that we may help you find a better understanding of caregiving, help you find some tools and guides in caring for yourself, not to make anyone feel guilty or ashamed, but hopefully to be life-giving and liberating, to help you discover some spiritual keys as a caregiver, and to provide some resources for caregiving. I do have a handout which I hope is available through the church office with some resources, some that I have found helpful. You'll find on that handout as well a number of websites that are very helpful, some devotionals and some other kinds of readings. So what does it mean to be a caregiver? What are the issues, the challenges, the stress points? What are the emotional and spiritual issues? What are some common coping strategies in being a caregiver? For our purposes here, a caregiver is an unpaid individual, a spouse, partner, family, friend, neighbor, other family member, that is involved in assisting others, be it the care receiver, with activities of daily living and or medical tasks. Formal caregivers are those that get paid to be care providers, providing care in one's home or care setting. Over the past few years, this topic has just exploded. There are a number of different materials, books, handbooks, guides, websites, that it's almost overwhelming. For example, in 2019, Guidepost magazine ran a whole series on caregiving, right? And each month had a different article about some aspect of caregiving. In that series, Kim and Glenn Campbell wrote about caring for Glenn through his Alzheimer's. Actress Kate Mulgrew wrote an article about caring for her mother, and entitled that article as the toughest role she ever took. Al Roker talked about caring for his son, who is a special needs child, and how he and his wife balance their family needs. Another wonderful resource is AARP. Their website is filled with several articles, and their monthly magazine often has articles about some aspect of caregiving. It's an excellent resource, and I commend it to you. But all of that speaks to the breadth of caregiving. Caring for those with special and specific needs. You may be called as a caregiver to care for someone with some form of dementia, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's, MS, cancer, stroke, or other kinds of diseases. Last year in 2020, AARP did a survey, and they wrote in their survey, for individuals who take on the responsibility of caring for another person through sickness or disability, can often be challenging to see beyond the individual experience. Yet, in the aggregate, taken as a whole, family caregivers, whether they be families of kin or families of choice, are woven into the fabric of America's health, social, economic, and long-term services and support systems. As the country continues to age, the need to support caregivers as the cornerstone of society will only become more and more important. Let me repeat that. As the country continues to age, the need to support caregivers as the cornerstone of our society will become more and more important. I hope and pray that this time together may help in a small way in that. Today, more than 1 in 5 Americans are caregivers, 21.3%, having provided care to an adult or a child with special needs at some point in the last 12 months. This is an estimated 53 million adults in the United States, which is up from the figures in 2015, 5 years before. In 2015, the figure was 43.5 million. When looking at caregivers for adults only, the prevalence of caregiving has risen from 16.6% in 2015 to 19.2% in 2020. An increase of over 80 million adults providing care to an adult family member or friend. Note that in the city of Lakewood, According to the 2010 census, Lakewood has a population of over 60 of 8,338, or 16% of our population. I can't imagine what that's grown in the last 10 years. Caregiving remains an activity that occurs among all generations, all racial, ethnic groups, income or educational levels, family types, gender identities, or sexual orientation. Caregiving does not discriminate. The data suggests that many caregivers may be taking on this role without adequate and affordable service and supports in place. Most caregivers take care of a relative, while just 10% take care of a friend or neighbor or non-relative. About 50% care for a parent or a parent-in-law, and about 12% for a spouse or partner. In light of the current COVID pandemic, many are taking on the role of caregiving and taking on the responsibilities of caring for a loved one at home. Adult children have moved in with parents, or parents move in with the kids. Many of the adult children have either lost or left their jobs, and part of leaving their job may be the need to care for their parents. The majority of caregivers are female. 8 in 10 are taking care of one person, and on average, caregivers are 49 years old. Nearly half of all caregivers provide care for someone 75 years or older. Roughly half of all care recipients live in their own home. And those providing care, living with their care recipient, spend much more time, obviously, in their caregiving. When caregivers are asked what they perceive to be the main reason their recipient needs care, the top 3 problems cited are old age, Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, surgery or wounds. Some other common conditions include cancer, mobility, emotional or mental health issues. Although Alzheimer's or dementia are cited in only 8% of caregivers, as the main reason for which the care recipient needs help, a total of 22% of caregivers say that their loved one suffers from some form of cognitive impairment. Now, I don't share these statistics to overwhelm anyone or to give you some cute answer in a trivia contest or on Jeopardy, but to help paint a picture. Most of what I will talk about in the course of our time together has to do with caring for those who are aging and may have some form of cognitive impairment, dementia or Alzheimer's. Over the past year, a phrase has come into our language that perhaps more than anyone may care to admit. The phrase is new normal. To be honest, I think it may be a bit overused, because I'm not entirely sure folks know what we mean by that. And yes, I know that there's an old joke about what normal is. Normal being only a setting on a dryer, and even then it doesn't work right. But if normal means some semblance of life the way it used to be, then in the realm of caregiving, normal gets redefined on almost a daily basis, especially if one is caring for someone with a cognitive impairment, dementia, or Alzheimer's. And in fact, what may be normal in the morning may not be normal in the afternoon, because things can change that quickly. As I said, in such cases, what may be considered normal yesterday may not, probably is not, the case today. If you find yourself caring for someone, be it a parent, a spouse, a loved one, let me say first of all, you are not alone, although it may feel that way at times. You are not the Lone Ranger. And secondly, let me say that although there are some commonalities across the spectrum of caregiving, each situation is different. And part of the challenge of caregiving, of being a caregiver, is to find out what works best for you. In this next section, I'll talk more about caregiving roles. But let me say at this point that in caregiving, especially for an older adult, a parent, there's often a role reversal where the adult child becomes the parent to their own parents. And that can provide its own set of challenges, opportunities, discussion. I mentioned earlier the article in the Guidepost magazine by Kate Mulgrew. You may remember her as Captain Janeway on Star Trek Voyager, for those of you that may be Trekkies. But she writes in her article this story. Kitten, my mother said to me one day, "You should be my mother." And then she says, I was 14 years old and the oldest in a family of 8 when she told me that. And then she goes on to tell the story of her experience in caring for her mother with Alzheimer's. As I said, she describes her experience as the toughest role I've ever had to play. And then she goes on to write at the end, I feel lucky that I had the chance to show my mother how much I loved her and to give back to her just a portion of what she gave to me, and then some. I would like to end each of our sessions together in sharing a bit of a devotional. It comes from the book 124 Prayers for Caregivers by Joan Gunselman. She shares this devotional. Reflections on from Isaiah 43. The prophet writes, being the mouthpiece of God, in my eyes you are precious and honored, and I love you. And then she writes, what would we do if no one was willing to care for us when we needed help and could not manage on our own. Those who are willing to be present to others in need perform a most necessary service. When we are conscientious and loving caregivers, we are not only precious to God, but to those for whom we care, whether they recognize it or not. Would you join with me in prayer? It is wonderful, O God, who is love, to realize and accept that I am precious to you. Help me always be willing to offer myself in such a way that you take delight in me. May all the care I give be an expression of your love being shown in my unique way.